Hello YouTube, Dave here again, and we are back with my video series archiving and chronicling or cataloging my entire RPG collection, at least as of 2018. I'm hoping to get this series wrapped up before the end of the year. So far I've taken a look at my smaller RPG collections, things such as Starfinder, Pathfinder, the Dragon Age RPG, and my D20 version of Call of Cthulhu. But today we're going to start actually getting into the main event, I guess you could call it, the bread and butter of my collection. We're going to be looking at Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm going to be going through and separating out the videos by edition for the majority of the stuff, but certain campaign settings will also get their own dedicated video. In fact, I already have videos for the Forgotten Realms and Eberron that I had done before I even really decided to actually go forward with this series that I recently added to the playlist. And I will probably be doing the exact same thing with the Dragonlance setting because I can do that with that setting. As far as other smaller settings that I only have a couple of things for, I will probably do that as their own separate video and just sort of have it as like miscellaneous settings. So anyway, without further ado, let's just dive right in, and there's no place better to start than the actual beginning. So we're going to be looking at the original version of Dungeons & Dragons, OD&D or D&D 0 Edition, the white box D&D, however you want to refer to it as. But before we get into the white box D&D, we have to talk a little bit about the Chainmail rules for medieval miniatures. So Chainmail was the game that came out prior to Dungeons & Dragons. For anyone who's not aware, the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game is actually derived from tabletop strategy games that did like historical battle recreations or fantasy battle recreations, and Chainmail was amongst the earliest versions of like fantasy strategy games that actually had things, instead of having, cannons or catapults, you had like wizards shooting fireballs or lightning bolts, stuff like that. So this was one of the earliest versions of that. And from these Chainmail rules came the game that we all know and love today, at least hopefully for the people watching this video know and love. So we're going to be looking at that, and that is, like I said, the original version of Dungeons and Dragons. And the very first set of D&D books to ever come out were little booklets that came in a box set. Now, I don't have the box. Those are incredibly rare to find, and the prices are pretty ridiculous, so I might eventually just make my own, or see if I can find a a third party or aftermarket sort of thing, just to be able to put them in something. But I do have the contents of the original box set, so we're just going to go through those right now. So we had 3 booklets. The first booklet was Men and Magic. So this is essentially what we would refer to now as the player's handbook. And so this has the rules for sort of creating your characters and things along those lines. And I've had people ask me, and by the way, the original characters that you could create were, if we look at the list here, you had fighting men, magic users, and I guess that's it. Or clerics. Okay, yeah, sorry, clerics were in there as well. And then you had like dwarves and elves and hobbits. Just look at that. Oh, copyright infringement going on there. So I've had people ask me if I ever plan on running this version of the game, and the answer to that is no. I really don't, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, it's the only version of the game that I don't actually have first-hand experience with as a player, at the very least, prior to this point. And second, there is this blurb right here. Under number of players, at least one referee, and that's what was called before the term Dungeon Master was coined, and from 4 to 50 players. 4 to 50. Now, that said, it does say that can be handled in any single campaign, but the referee to player ratio should be about 1 to 20 or thereabouts. So up to 20 players sitting at your table and trying to run a campaign with up to 50 players. Now, again, this comes from the times which you would have like these massive strategy games set up that you'd have like whole scenarios that had different players partaking in it. But yeah, I've said these numbers before in the past, and I've had people accuse me of exaggerating or making that up. So there you go. There it is, right there in print. 4 to 50 players, between 1 and 20 players for a single referee / dungeon master. So this was the first book here. Just had sort of your basic stuff, your explanation of stats, your equipment, your experience that were required to level up, including all the names for the various levels, because that was a thing back then. Even a first level character, first level fighter, was considered to be a veteran. And then they go up to hero or warrior, swordsman, hero, swashbuckler, the myrmidon, champion, superhero, not the superhero that we think of today, and lord. And then you have, interestingly enough, for the magic users, you have like medium as first level, then you have seer, conjurer, theurgist, thaumaturgist, magician, enchanter, warlock, sorcerer, necromancer, and wizard. And then clerics, you had acolyte, adept, village priest, vicar, curate, bishop, lama, like not as in the animal, and patriarch. So again, pretty cool there, and just some decent artwork and stuff in here as well. You have your armor class tables and your attack matrix, so you know what you need in order to hit certain armor classes, your saving throws, monsters, stuff like that. So again, pretty cool book there. And then you have your second book, which is Monsters and Treasure, and that's really self-explanatory. This is the book that is filled with monsters and treasure for you to put into your games. So you just got a little bit of stuff throughout here. Now, what's interesting, here's the gnoll from original Dungeons and Dragons. And does that look like what we consider gnolls now, which are like the hyena-based humanoids? Not really. So gnolls back in the day were actually based off of a combination or breeding between gnomes and trolls. And just see if I can actually find them in here, find their description, because it's I don't even want to think about how that would work. It does not sound pleasant at all. So yeah, right there, gnolls, a cross between gnomes and trolls. Perhaps Lord Sunsea did not really make it all that clear. So anyway, there's actually some humor and stuff incorporated. You also have like some funny looking art in here as well. But yeah, so interesting to see sort of how far some of these creatures have come. And then we also have the Underworld and Wilderness Adventures. And this is just sort of, you know, it has some, looks like it's got some monster stats in here as well. But it also seems to have just some information or rules on, you know, things like designing dungeons or encounter building and stuff like that. The last thing that came in the original box set were the reference sheets, and these are actually in pretty delicate shape, so I don't want to handle them too much. But basically, this is just a collection of most of the charts that were included in the books here. So you have things like the attack matrix for the different types of characters, the monsters, you had like saving throw charts, turn undead for clerics, treasure charts, things along those lines. And it was just made to be sort of a quick reference things for the referees to be able to use. In addition to the core rules that we have here, there were also a number of supplements that were released. And I have them all here. So in total, the number of booklets that made up original Dungeons & Dragons was 7. 8 if you included getting a copy of the Chainmail rules to help out with the combat system. Plus there's one more sort of bonus book that we'll talk about at the end, although it was never actually officially ruled to be an actual supplement. I guess they had already mentioned how many booklets they were planning on putting out, didn't want to change that. So the first one that we have here is Greyhawk. And so this has, we'll just get to the actual table of contents, because it's been a while since I really looked through these. It's not necessarily a campaign setting in the sense that we're used to today. It has a little bit of information, but it's mostly like monster stats. Wow, Japanese ogre. So probably guess like the ogre mage. But this also introduced like new spells, new monsters, and it also introduced the paladin, the thieves, and I think that druids were mentioned here, although I don't know if they actually gave them full sets of rules or not. But you see there, thieves and paladins, and I think that they're an asterisk because they're newer to this this game, or this supplement. So yeah, this also was the book that first introduced us to things such as the owl bear, which is pretty cool. And boy, just look at these here. Bugbear, so Bugbear, Ghoul, and Friends, and wow. The Bugbear had like a pumpkin head in that art, so just some really interesting stuff. And it's cool to just go through and see some of these images and how some of these monsters have changed. And yeah, there is some questionable artwork thrown into these products as well. Unfortunately, hopefully I don't get flagged by that and have it age restricted or anything. So I'll try to avoid as much of that as possible. But there you go. Now, also, let's just take a moment to talk about this beholder. So beholders are one of my favorite monsters of all time, but honestly, it's not based off of this art. It literally looks like someone took a compass, drew a circle, and put in like some squiggly lines for the eye stalks. The central eye with like no details and a mouth. It just, whew, that's some art. There you go. So the second supplement to come out is the only book to be released for original Dungeons & Dragons that doesn't actually have Gary Gygax's name attached to it, and that is supplement number 2, Blackmoor by Dave Arneson. So the background, if I remember correctly, when it came to like Greyhawk and Blackmoor, was during the days before the actual Dungeons and Dragons game came out, the Chainmail rules were out, and Gygax, as well as Arneson and a few others, had created sort of their own living world for their tabletop strategy games. And Dave Arneson, they all had a little section of this overarching world, and Dave Arneson's contribution to that was Blackmoor. And a lot of people say that Blackmoor, even though it's the second supplement, was really the first fully fleshed out campaign setting. So I'm not sure how accurate that is. Like I said, it's been a while since I've done the research. But anyway, this is actually a really, really cool book. In addition to like where Greyhawk added the Paladin and Thieves, this book introduces some new stuff as well. I believe it brings in the monk. So we got monks and assassins were introduced in this book. And again, there's some really cool stuff in here. You've got some encounter stuff, again, some new monsters and magic items. But this also has the Temple of the Frog starting on page 28. And this is actually pretty cool because it seems like it's an actual adventure that's fully kind of fleshed out. You've got like some maps here. And I believe there's another one, so the High Priest of the Temple of the Frog. So again, just some really, really awesome stuff in here. Cool maps. You got the Pool of the Frog. So again, just really, really awesome stuff there. So this is supplement number 2. All right, so supplement number 3, I'm going to have to sort of cover over a bit. So again, trying to avoid having the video be age restricted, but we have Eldritch Wizardry. So this is sort of a controversial book. You have a woman unclothed lying on what looks like a sacrificial altar. And in 2013, Wizards of the Coast reprinted actually the original Dungeons & Dragons rulebooks, all 7 of them. And they changed the covers for each and every single booklet. And I can't help but feel that the reason that they did that was because of the cover of this book. So I don't want to go too far into it because, again, there's a lot of questionable artwork in here. But there is some cool stuff that I really wanted to touch on in this book. And the main thing is this book actually introduces psionics. So let's just go right back to the beginning. Or I believe it introduced, yeah, so there we go. So this one actually introduces psionics, which is like essentially mental magic or mind magic. In addition to that, though, it also has a ton of artifacts that are synonymous with Dungeons and Dragons. Some, ones that, people have based entire campaigns around. And they were put out in this book. So, the Invulnerable Coat of Iron, we've got that there. The Mace of St. Cuthbert, the Sword of Cast, Axe of Dwarvish Lords, the Wand of Orcus and the Rod of Seven Parts, the Codex of the Infinite Planes, the Hand and Eye of Vecna, and like Baba Yaga's hut. There's just so many awesome artifacts in here. And to me, like, it's interesting to see how far back some of these things have actually gone. Going all the way back to this originally came out. I don't think this is the first printing, but I think this came out in 1976. So there you go. It's been quite a while since this came out. But again, just another really cool book to have stuff like that in there. And again, I'm not going to try to focus too much on the art because I don't want this to get age restricted. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. And then we have the fourth, I should say, and final supplement, the 7th book overall for original Dungeons & Dragons. This is Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. And this is a book that was actually sent to me by a viewer. I never actually thought I would ever own a copy of this. They're very hard to find, at least where I live, so I can't thank that individual enough. So, I thanked him repeatedly when he first sent it to me, and every time I look at it again, it's just something that really makes me feel appreciative of the fact that it was ever sent to me to begin with. What's interesting is that this one doesn't seem to have a table of contents like most of the other books do, but it does have a bunch of gods in here, and like Celtic mythos. So this is sort of your gods and deities and demigods type of book. Looks like there's some items in here as well, giants. So again, another really cool addition to the collection that I wouldn't have had if it weren't for this channel, which is crazy to think of. So those are the original booklets for D&D 0 Edition, OD&D, Original D&D, whatever you want to refer to it, the white box D&D. But there was one more book that had come out around that time. And honestly, I never even knew this existed until a friend of mine gave it to me. He said he found it. I think he said he found it at, I can't remember if it was like a yard sale or a flea market or a thrift store, but it was like $2. So I tried to pay him back for it. He wouldn't take it. I looked it up online, and at that time it was going for between $50 and $80. I asked him, was like, "Are you sure you just want to give this to me? Do you want it back to do whatever?" And he said no, because he knew I would give it a good home. So this is Swords and Spells. So you see here, it says it's for use with Dungeons & Dragons, but it's not considered an actual official supplement. Essentially what it is it's an update to the Chainmail rule system, and it was meant to sort of replace that. So it says fantastic miniature rules on a 1/10 to 1/1 scale. And yeah, so it just has, again, just all the rules for playing a strategy game using, again, sort of the Dungeons and Dragons brand, which is really, really cool. And this came out in 1976 as well, although this particular printing was from 1979. So there you go, sort of the unofficial 8th booklet for the original Dungeons and Dragons brand. Let's just sort of move the stuff down here. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I tried to make it a little bit educational. Again, there's some details that are a little bit fuzzy. It's been a while since I've researched these. But again, I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. And if you guys have played original D&D, please let me know what your experiences were like and what you thought of the original system. I know that a lot of OSR or old school revival games try to base themselves off of this version of the Dungeons and Dragons game. So it's obviously had a massive impact on everything. So we're into it now. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And be sure to come back next week when I will be showing off the items that I have for my Dungeons & Dragons basic / expert BECME rules. So we'll go over all of that in the next video. Thank you guys once again very much for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Take care.